With so many options on streaming services, it's hard to know what to watch. Sometimes the cover or description are vague and not very helpful, but I want to focus on a very underrated French-Canadian show that has the English title, Can You Hear Me? I don't speak French, and because I have to multitask often, I often watched with both the English subtitles and English audio playing. Sometimes the two mismatch, but it's not significant. This show really pulls you in, and I wish more people were aware of it, though I can understand why. Since this video isn't exactly going to be touching on a lot of happy topics, we're going to have a quick happy bun moment before we go any further. Aside from the obvious item of including spoilers, there's going to be more sensitive topics such as R, SA, violence, SH, and pregnancy miscarriage. Feel free to click away at any point. Since this is YouTube and I'm just a tiny little creator, I have to do my best in working around using certain terms. So if something sounds a little strange, it's not because I don't think it's important, but I want to be able to discuss these issues. This show has a lot to unpack, so this video will mainly focus on Season 1. It follows the lives of 3 friends living in generational poverty. For the definitions, I'll link the intro video here. The 3 friends are Fabiola, Carol Ann, and Ada. I'm not super positive on if it's Ada or Ada. I had difficulty figuring out consistency in pronunciation. Each one gives a glimpse into the difficulties that being in poverty brings, yet there are also glimmers of hope and genuine happiness. The characters are complex, and the show doesn't try to show their situation as something that is easily fixed. It's brutally honest and portrays poverty in a realistic way that still gives respect to the characters. It might take place in Canada, but it's not vastly different from what it can be like in the US. The beginning of the first episode is a quick snapshot of the setting and characters and shows us that it will mostly take place in the impoverished, rundown part of town. The first glimpses of the characters give us an idea of their individual situations. We see Fabiola singing, Caro being captivated in her book, and Ada at her court-mandated meeting for anger therapy. Fabiola enjoys singing, and it's one of the tools she uses to cope. Even later joins a church choir when she misses her audition for a professional choir. Carol Ann uses books as her escape from trauma and domestic violence, and in Season 2 is able to work at a local bookstore. Ada is often reactive and constantly reminded by several characters that she goes too far, and has anger issues, which cause her to end up in jail by the end of Season 1. While there are similar difficulties that all 3 face, such as family dysfunction, lack of education, and romantic relationships, each character also has certain perspectives unique to their situation. Fabiola's story deals with the issues in having a family member that is addicted, difficulties in immigration, racism, impact of religion, and her connection to food. Fabiola's family is originally from Haiti. Her mom returned there 2 years ago, but this isn't really explained as to why in the first 2 seasons that I was able to catch. She works at a local fast food restaurant alongside her initial love interest, Jean-Michel, who is almost cartoonishly a ladies' man. He uses Fabi to get whatever he needs, such as money or food. While Fabi loves him, Ada clearly despises him, and voices this often to anyone and everyone, including Jean-Michel. When Ada confronts Fabi about how he treats her, she always rationalizes it and says she isn't stupid and is okay with it. I would classify Jean-Michel as a person that lives for immediate gratification. He doesn't care if he breaks any rules or if he causes someone else to. It's obviously worked for him, so he probably isn't going to change anytime soon. Even when he initiates a kiss with Ada, Fabi is far harsher to her than Jean-Michel. His inability to reflect on his actions is clear when Fabi confronts him after seeing him flirt, kiss, and hug another coworker. Even though she almost moves past the incident with Ada, she doesn't this time. Maybe she had to see it again, maybe she only sees Ada as the instigator. His reaction to being confronted is saying, "Oh my god, you're so mean. I don't care about those other women. What you and I have is real." Ugh. It's just annoying, honestly. At least Fabi calls him out on it and confidently walks away after saying he's dead to her now. Go Fabi. Fabi's grandma also lives in the house, and she's usually asleep or napping when she's on the screen. It isn't clear if this is a medical issue, depression, old age, or a mix of these. This is part of why Fabi can't just leave her sister's child at home, because it doesn't seem that the grandma is physically able to do so. Fabi works to try and create a consistent schedule for baby. However, her sister is unreliable due to her addiction and is part of why she misses her audition. I think the combination of being the responsible one in the family, cultural pressure, and religious background drive her convictions on what is right or wrong. It's kind of an odd dichotomy. She often tells Ada not to swear in church, though outside of church, cursing is usually acceptable, and even Fabi does it. Even when confronted on why something is right or wrong, Fabi usually reverts back to phrases that are commonly heard in churches or more religiously conservative backgrounds. I'll come back to Caro's situation with being pregnant, but for now, put a pin in that. When the three are in the church having a funeral after Caro's miscarriage, Fabi starts with scriptures that don't really relate to the situation. Caro asks if there are verses about nature, so Fabi switches and complies. And we also find out that Caro doesn't believe in God. I would say her two biggest downfalls are her insecurity and her ritualistic religious patterns. When Caro is trying to decide whether or not to go to the clinic, she continually tells her she's wrong, but doesn't offer help. When Ada ends up in prison, she goes to see her just to basically say, "You went too far and I'm abandoning you." I think this comes from a place where she's often had to take care of her family on her own, and she has some resentment from it since Caro doesn't have to take care of family or children, and Ada sometimes has to deal with her mom, but not always. Fabi also refuses to listen to any reasoning that doesn't match her current morality worldview, so it often comes off as unempathetic. Another piece of her insecurity is not necessarily seeing herself as worth it. At the start of episode 7, a random passerby shouts a racial slur at her while she is outside smoking, and she smacks him in the face, telling him to mind his manners. Because he is the one pressing charges to her, Fabi's manager tells her that she has to show proof of controlling her temper. This frustration of working in a low-wage job while taking crap is a story all too familiar for many of us. Also, it seems strange that if someone is pressing charges against her, either he isn't telling the whole story, or no one talked to Fabi, or she decided it wasn't worth it and didn't say anything. If they didn't ask her, then it's a failure of the justice system. If they did ask her and she didn't say anything, that probably speaks to her feelings that she doesn't see the system as being on her side, or possibly she doesn't see herself as worth the fight. Afterwards, when Fabi talks with the other two, Fabi tries to hide this, and Ada tells her that she was correct to react the way she did, and even works with her therapist to see Fabi so she can get to keep her job. In therapy, Fabi explains that she can't get mad at every single person that's racist to her. The therapist explains she has a right to defend herself, and that being passive isn't always a positive trait. Delving into the immigrant stereotypes and racism is better spoken from people other than myself, so I'll leave that voice to those creators. Fabi is noticeably more cruel to Ada than any of the other characters, and my guess is that this is from her insecurities. When they go to the spa in season 6, one of her challenges to herself is to jump into the cold pool. She attempts this several times, but isn't until the very end she finally does it. If this had been Ada, I think she would have just dove in and went with it. Food is also something that Fabi struggles with, and her character is one of the best depictions I've seen of how the emotional connection to food can be overpowering, and when it's used as a coping mechanism, it's that much harder to overcome. She is aware of this, and at times in the series will say she's on a diet. In the first episode, she states she refuses a brownie for this reason. However, we see her secretly eat high-calorie, low-nutrient foods at home at various times in the show when she is unable to handle the situation at hand. In one instance, an entire package of corn dogs in a deep fryer, and in another, she is tempted by a box of cookies. Obesity and poverty tend to go hand in hand, and that is scheduled for a future video. For this video, I just want to briefly mention binge eating disorder, or BED. It is a newer-ish diagnosis that needs further research. According to the article linked below, quote, "Secretive eating is characterized by eating furtively and concealing the act and evidence of eating," end quote. I'm not diagnosing or saying that Fabi has this. I bring this up because eating disorders are complex, and with how obesity and socioeconomic status are often tied together, eating disorders should be part of the research when analyzing this data. Fabi's main talent and escape from poverty is singing. Even if it's just sitting at the park and singing for the kids that happen to be playing there, it is what helps her find peace. She often writes the songs they sing in the metro to get money, and in season 1, episode 3, she's auditioning for judges that clearly underestimate her, as she is able to belt out her own song, "I Exist." She tries to count on her sister to babysit her child during the follow-up audition, but her sister bails. Fabi decides to bring Baby with, however, before they head out, Baby gets sick, so she has to stay home. She could call Ada or someone else, but chooses not to. Fabi truly works to give Baby a better life, and she doesn't blame her for falling ill and causing her to miss her audition. The episode ends with Fabi singing a powerful rendition of I Exist in her living room. Caro's story deals with a cycle of abuse of alcohol, avoiding mental health issues, and also finding her voice. She is usually hiding in a book, sinking in a chair, or hiding behind a coat or something similar. She experiences panic attacks, throws up from stress, and uses alcohol as a way to cope. These are not unusual responses for someone that has been through A or SA. According to RAIN, that I'll link below, 70% of victims experience moderate to severe distress, a larger percentage than for any other violent crime. While there are often flashbacks throughout the show, it's not super clear until the end of season 1 that while she has experiencing these issues throughout her life, it's one particular incident that makes her shut down and withdraw herself more so than she usually does. The incident in question occurred at a party where she is attacked by 3 men while Kevin, her boyfriend, sees this happen and does nothing. This results in Caro being pregnant. The way her story is portrayed is good at showing how painful memories don't always come back in a linear fashion and take time for those memories to be less fuzzy. They also tend to pop up at inconvenient times. It is painfully obvious with how something as small as checking her phone after receiving a text from Kevin can set off a panic attack, extreme pain, or cause her to throw up. It's not clear if it is the first time Caro has left Kevin in this way before or not. According to the Virginia Physicians for Women link below, it takes an average of 7 attempts to be able to leave an abusive relationship. There's also the additional issue of not being able to go back to her parents, as we also learn that her mom is in the same toxic relationship with her dad as Caro is with Kevin. According to RAIN, 8 out of 10 instances of SV are committed by someone they know, in this case Caro's dad and boyfriend. They are both verbally aggressive, loud, and abusive. According to the Centers for Disease Control and the National Violence and Death Reporting System, quote, child abuse and neglect and other adverse childhood experiences can also have a tremendous impact on lifelong health, opportunity, and well-being if left untreated. For exposure to violence in childhood increases the risk of injury, future violence, victimization and perpetration, substance abuse, sexually transmitted infections, delayed brain development, lower educational attainment, and limited employment opportunities. Chronic abuse may result in toxic stress, which can change brain development and increase the risk for problems like post-traumatic stress disorder and learning, attention, and memory difficulties, end quote. Sadly, Caro's situation is not unusual. The few times that Caro and her mom talk to each other, they mostly discuss innocuous things, but Caro's mom often says, "Your father would love to hear from you," which is clearly triggering for her, so much so that during one phone call, she hangs up. When Ada works to get her therapist to see Caro, she is hesitant, believing that the therapist will think she's nuts. We also get a hint that therapy is working for Ada because her response to Caro is that it might be corny, but it might actually help. But if you want to stay miserable, then fine. The therapist encourages Caro to express herself through writing, and this does seem to help her find her voice. Caro doesn't confront Kevin first, but rather her dad. She practices what she wants to say, but when she confronts him face to face, she instead tells her mom to leave. She deserves better, and she can do it. Before Caro tearfully runs away. It isn't until season 2 that Caro's mom leaves her dad, but it's clear that this situation impacted that decision. Contrast this with Caro calling Kevin from the bar drunk, asking why he did nothing to help her if he supposedly loves her. We do see glimpses of Caro trying to escape, or making those small steps to get there, such as going to the police station, but not going inside. At the end of season 1, we are shown that Caro returns to Kevin. Along with disappearing into books, Caro dresses androgynously and in muted or darker tones. When the 3 visit the spa, she doesn't wear a swimsuit, but rather shorts and a tank top. It might be because she doesn't have one, but it's likely that it's another shield, as she is not willing to take off even her socks when she goes in for a massage. Props to the massage therapist, though, as he respectfully lets her know that she chooses the pace and he respects her boundaries. The last item for Caro I want to discuss before the last character, that she usually takes the path of least resistance. She generally just goes along with whatever the other 2 are doing, and doesn't usually get involved in any of the fights. When Fabi criticizes her for even going to the clinic, Caro eventually just walks away because it's clear there isn't any middle ground with Fabi, and why continue fighting this? Considering that she grew up in a house with lots of fighting, and then was in a relationship with a lot of fighting, conflict is something Caro isn't comfortable with and doesn't see problems being resolved with it. The last main character is Ada, and her story deals with a mom that is a lady of the night, difficulties with impulse control, betrayal, loneliness, and learning to address situations properly. Of the 3, Ada is the person most likely to react immediately to a situation. She has a strong loyalty to those in her life and doesn't appear to judge anyone. She has no fear expressing herself in a blunt manner and addresses situations in a straightforward way. Ada is fast to react, and she usually does so in anger. In Carol Graham's article, The High Costs of Being Poor in America, Stress, Pain, and Worry, they discuss that poverty is more likely to be associated with higher levels of stress and anger in one's life. For those in poverty, that isn't a surprise. For all three characters in the show, they all have anger but handle it differently. In Ada's case, she acts out on this often inappropriately. However, since this is in Canada instead of the US, it appears that Canada will at least try therapy as a possible solution. I've also linked a Science Journal article below that discusses how living in low socioeconomic backgrounds can affect our brains in early adolescence to react more quickly to angry facial expressions that are perceived as threats. However, I do want to point out that the study only focused on 277 8th grade youths in the Chicago area. I would want to see more information from other areas of the US and other ages to get a full picture. Along with anger, Ada also uses humor as a shield to handle different situations, though it can be inappropriate. Ada's strong emotional response is also connected with an extreme loyalty for her friends, taking on their burdens, reacting for them. She despises Jean-Michel because she feels Fabi deserves to be treated better and doesn't see Fabi demanding that for herself. However, Ada has the most disdain towards Kevin and how he treats Caro, which I'll come back to. She's also the one that puts her words into actions and actively shows support. When Fabi thinks she did poor at her audition, Ada's the one that tells Fabi she has the most beautiful voice in the world, and it feels like a genuine compliment since Ada tends to wear her heart on her sleeve. When Fabi needs a babysitter, Ada is willing to do so and actually follows through. When Fabi's sister is freaking out because her stash was flushed, Fabi calls Ada for help. Ada is the one that helps calm down Fabi's sister. When Caro is being attacked by Kevin, she calls Ada first. Ada shows up and even takes some punches when she is trying to protect her. Ada is willing to go with Caro to the clinic while Fabi is not. She tries to be supportive of her friend's decisions. When Caro tells her she wants to cut down on drinking, Ada tries to be aware of this and even help her when Caro isn't following through on it. When Fabi says she's on a diet, Ada tries to help Fabi with her decision to do so. Basically, Ada is part of the group when Fabi or Caro need something from her. Neither help financially in the same way Ada does. Caro does drive her to therapy sessions when her cousin lets her borrow her vehicle, and when Ada goes on a bender, Fabi does carry her into the apartment and try to clean her up. However, Fabi uses a toilet brush, and once Ada is cleaned up and in bed, Fabi and Caro leave to do other things. When Ada tells Fabi about her mom being a lady of the night, Fabi gives sort of a churchy response, but doesn't treat Ada any differently after learning this information. Ada is also willing to share everything she has, and she's the one that finds a way to get money for their activities they usually do together. Usually her money is from providing adult services, or it's from her government stipend. When they go to the bar, Ada seems to be the only one that is paying. When they have their day at the spa, Ada's the one that uses adult services to get money for them to do so. So how do they show their appreciation for her doing this for them? Caro gets a permanent marker and has Fabi draw something inappropriate on Ada's face, and the rest of the day the two laugh at her, and she doesn't know why until the end. It might seem strange that she is willing to be treated like this by people who are supposed to be her friends, but it doesn't appear that many of the people in Ada's life have been kind or respectful to her, including her own mom. Her mom is usually drunk or under the influence of something. When she microwaves a metal can and it explodes, Ada's the one that tells her that you can't microwave metal and cleans it up. Her mom is also harsh with her, saying, "You're a beautiful woman, too bad you dress like a piece of trailer trash." Ada retorts back that she learned from the best. Ada eventually finds her an apartment after her mom keeps forgetting to pay rent, and when Ada confronts her mom, she tells her that she always remembers to buy a beer, so rent shouldn't be so hard. So Ada is immature in some instances, but she's not a child and is aware that there are certain responsibilities as an adult you have to take care of. When her mom is evicted, she brings her to her new apartment. When Ada is trying to avoid the landlord and sneak out the window, she gets stuck. What does her mom do? She sits there laughing at her for at least 10 minutes and doesn't try to help. Ada even calls Caro to come over, and now two people get to sit and laugh at her before her mom eventually helps her to get through the window. Eventually, living with her mom becomes too much of a burden for her, so she kicks her out. Her mom is visibly upset, and as she is packing her things to leave, she is extremely harsh with Ada, telling her that if she hadn't kept her, she would be living like a queen, and even calls her own daughter a piece of crap. Ada even starts to reconsider kicking her mom out, but her mom leaves before that happens. One of Ada's friends is another lady of the night that goes by the name Pretzel. They always say hi to each other, and Ada also helps Pretzel find a rosary from her sister out of the drain when she's freaking out. Unfortunately, Ada finds Pretzel dead in a pile of trash and is heartbroken. She even retrieves the rosary that she knew was so important to her. When the three women are in the church for Caro's miscarriage memorial, after the other two leave, Ada leaves a pretzel on the altar as her way of officially saying goodbye. As far as Nassim, Ada is the one that initiates the flirting, and at the beginning he is slightly condescending to her, but she calls him out on it each time, and he starts being more conscious as to how he speaks with her. She does try to make better decisions when it comes to him, but still has gaps in her ability to communicate. When Ada wants to confront Kevin about the situation with Caro, she throws a pitcher of beer in Nassim's face that was part of her anger response. At the end of season 1, he gets upset that Ada didn't meet him to talk things over, but then we see the newspaper that shows Ada going to prison for attempting to remove Kevin's manhood. So with that, let's circle back to Caro's miscarriage. Every time it's brought up, Fabi is extremely strong about her stance on the matter and just repeatedly tells this to Caro. Fabi comes off as quite aggressive, often talking over Caro or interrupting, saying things like, "You don't understand what you're doing. I know you're going to regret it. If you go to that clinic, I'm done with you." It was painful for me to watch this because as she is putting this on Caro, she isn't listening as to why Caro is considering this or what would make her think about going to the clinic in the first place. On the other hand, Ada fights for Caro more than Caro does, although she also handles the situation a bit poorly in that she isn't asking Caro about what happened and just assumes it's Kevin's. As mentioned previously, Caro miscarries and says, quote, "Even this baby didn't want me," end quote. Fabi stops being harsh and comforts Caro, even suggesting that she can stay at her apartment for the evening. Fabi and Ada help Caro in different ways. Fabi is more of a caregiver, and we see that in how she helps the other people in her life. For Ada, she gets the money for the spa getaway to help Caro relax and move on to the next steps. So, Kevin. Ada has legitimate reasons for disliking this guy. When she gets the full story, she is angry at herself for not hearing out Caro and blames herself. She then runs into Kevin and tries to remove his manhood. She misses, but does manage to hurt him enough that he ends up in the hospital. Caro does not appear to have left Kevin at this point, as she is later in the hospital with him, but she says that Ada has gone too far. For Fabi, she goes to prison to tell Ada to her face that not only did she go too far, but they should take some time apart as friends, and they should take some time to reflect on all of this. Again, Fabi is judgmental and harsh and doesn't want to hear about it. Ada's character resonated with me because she has such a strong loyalty to her friends that it creates a blind spot where it allows Fabi and Caro to treat her the way they do. In watching the show the second time around, it was more apparent that Fabi doesn't treat Ada with much, if any, respect and looks down on her. I had to cut 2 people out of my life that I thought were my friends when I started recognizing that I was being treated in a similar way to Ada. Now the time has passed and I've been through lots of therapy, I learned that part of my issue was not creating or enforcing boundaries in how I was being treated. However, it was the responsibility of these so-called friends to treat me with the same respect they wanted. I also learned that some of their actions were from jealousy or insecurity they had and were not properly dealing with. Even though this mostly focused on Season 1, I still didn't even discuss half the items I wanted to. Season 2 has even more, such as Fabi gaining more confidence, Ada's experience after prison release, and Caro's daily struggles in a toxic environment. This is a show that deserves more attention because sometimes we have to see the full ugly reality of these types of issues to understand that we can't just put a simple fix in place to solve it. If you would like to see a breakdown of Season 2 or have other shows you want to hear about, comment below. The description will have resources and links to current organizations that are working to help in this area. Till next time.